Hello, everyone. Good evening. So we will be starting up in 5 minutes. Till then, we are just waiting for the people to join. So hang tight and start up with your introduction. In that way, it will help you to learn new things and also to absorb what I will be saying today. In the meantime, if anyone would like to introduce themselves, they can put their introduction on the chat section. It is also preferred if you can mention any experience you have with web development or with Python, because that will help me to curate my presentation material. Okay, so we are going to start right now. I guess if more people will be joining, they will be accepted by the host. So let me start sharing my screen so that I can know that yes, everything is all right. Okay, so can anyone just confirm if my screen is being shared and my slides are visible?
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay, cool. What about others? They can just put a yes or a no on the chat section. Okay. And there is no need to call me sir. You can just refer me by my name. And if you have any doubts, please don't unmute yourself because that will break the continue of the whole session. Instead, just put your question on the chat section, and I will be going through all of them at specific points of time. Okay, awesome. So if you have any doubts, just hang tight. Wait for me to respond so that everyone can capitalize upon each other's learning and all the doubts that we have. Okay, so are my slides visible? I guess they should be. Okay, let's get started. If my slides are not visible at any point of time or my voice starts breaking, anyone can just unmute themselves and they can speak that up right then, because that will help me to set up my system in a proper manner. Okay, so good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us for this session on building applications with Flask. And in this session, we will be basically discussing a lot about application development using Flask and how you, as a beginner, can get started with it. We will also discuss in what manner you can completely rock by developing some cool applications with Flask. That part will come once you have a basic understanding about Flask and also about APIs, that basically stand for Application Programming Interface, and how we can develop applications using them. So if you have not heard about any of these terms before, you don't need to worry because I will be going through all of them with a breakdown that will be exactly friendly for all the beginners. I would also like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to the team at CypherBuild for inviting me for this session, and I am elated to be delivering this talk right now. So let's start up with our interaction. So for people who don't know about Flask, so basically Flask is a micro web framework that is implemented using Python programming language, and that is being used for developing web applications. So in very simple terms, Flask allows you to build a web application using Python, and it allows you to build both simple and complex applications. So I have been a Python developer for the past 2 years, and I have used multiple frameworks and libraries like Django, Fast API for developing applications, but Flask is what I always prefer to use, and they are for some obvious reasons. So right now, Flask is very popular. It is being actively maintained by the original developers, and it is quite extensible, and it just has a very simple code. And the main reason why many people love Flask, including me, is because of its documentation and simply enormous number of examples. So let's say if you're getting stuck somewhere, you can exactly go to some other project that has been implemented using Flask. You can see some of the examples and you can start building upon the theme. So this makes very easy to develop in Flask and also to start working with it. So in this session, we will discuss about almost all of these terms and technologies right from a very beginner level. If you have got any doubts or questions, just put them in the chat section and I ensure that I will be going through all of them at a specific time and help you clear up your doubts. So with this determination, let's get started up. So let me start off with a gentle introduction to myself. My name is Harsh, and I am a MLH fellow for the fall 2020 batch, and I'm currently working as a developer outreach at DeepSource. And I have been a former software engineer intern at QSF2 and a technical content reviewer intern at Geeks for Geeks. So over the past few months, I have been a participant as well as a project administrator for various open source programs like Student Code, Secret Number of Code, Hacking Codes, and semester-long projects, where I have administered projects that has been implemented using Flask. And beside all that, I'm a third year student at Satyabhama Institute of Science and Technology, and I love to work with web development, data modeling, algorithms, and all that. And I'm also a technical and open source mentor at OpenMind, where we basically work with private AI modeling, and at Codeway, which is an edtech startup that helps students to get involved with open source communities. So you can catch me up on LinkedIn or on GitHub at the rate Harsh Casper. So let's get started up. So let's check out the agenda for the session today. In today's session, we will be basically learning the basics of Flask and how you can get started with API development using Flask. You will also get a head start on developing applications with Flask on a web interface and why it is such a great choice for developing applications. I will also give you a very gentle introduction about various terminologies in Flask, which will be very basic. I will not be going into intermediate or advanced topics today. And lastly, we are going to build a very simple project using Flask, and we are going to make use of some third-party APIs for this purpose. So if you're having any doubts, just put it on the chat section, and either me or one of the hosts will help you out in the entire process. Okay, cool. So the first question, what is Flask? So basically, as I mentioned before, Flask is a web framework that offers tools, libraries, and technologies that makes it quite suitable for you to develop web application. Now, this web application can come in any form or in any size. It can be a simple collection of web pages. It can be a blog. It can be a wiki page, or it can be a full-fledged full stack solution. Now, Flask is one of the best micro web frameworks as it has little to no dependencies on external libraries. You can take into example some of the other framework that has been implemented using Python. Let's say Django, let's say Web2Py. Both, all of them have literally a lot of dependencies and you have to brainstorm upon quite a lot of things. But Flask is simple yet extensible. It allows you to implement a lot of things without actually doing a lot of things. So an advantage of using Flask might be the fact that this framework is very, very light. So this means that you can simply deploy it anywhere and it can work without any sort of a performance issue. And also the risk for encountering bugs or security issues in Flask application is quite minimal. So since we have talked about a lot of things, first let us see the most basic, what a framework actually is. So basically, web application frameworks, or let's say just web frameworks, are the de facto way of building web applications. Now, I guess majority of you understand how web works. So every web page is transmitted to your browser as HTML page, which basically stands for Hypertext Markup Language. And this is being used by browsers to describe the content and the structure of the web page. Now, the application that is responsible for sending HTML to browser is called a web server. Simply put, a web server is just a remote computer that acts as a server through which we can send any sort of information if we give the particular information to that particular server. But how does the web application know what to send to the browser? It sends whatever the browser requests. So let's say basically the browsers download websites from web servers using the HTTP protocol, which basically stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. And it is simply based upon a request and response model. So basically the client, that stands for your browser, it requests some sort of a data from the web application that resides on a physical machine. And the web application in turn responds to the request with the data that your browser has requested. So a web application is responsible for receiving an HTTP request and basically sending back an HTTP response that usually contains some HTML that represents the page that we have requested for. So it sounds pretty easy, isn't it? But implementing it on code is quite a lot complex without any web framework. So a framework is basically just a software that already has basics built into it, and you're just going to nitpick some of the particular features, like some of the particular features or modules for your own purpose to build something much better. So many a time, this helps you to build things faster, and you don't have to basically reinvent the whole wheel. The frameworks vary quite a lot on what you're trying to achieve. We have PHP frameworks, we have JavaScript frameworks, we have frameworks that allow us to develop user interfaces and all that. So there are frameworks for literally each and everything. So just like any other language, Python also has got some frameworks through which we can develop some web application. And to be very honest, Python is a beautiful language, not just because it is readable, but it is also properly indented, but also because of the availability of a high number of libraries and frameworks for the same purpose. So web development in Python has its own advantages. You can use different Python libraries like for data science or machine learning or computer vision or business analytics, and you can just embed different aspects and functionalities to your website quite readily. And not many languages other than Python have done this in a very efficient manner. So Flask is just one example of a Python framework, but there are tons of other frameworks that are both easy and hard compared to Flask in both learning and the implementation part, but they offer quite a great difference in performance and speed. So now let's come to the main question: what is Flask? So basically, as I mentioned before, Flask is a micro web framework, and it lets you do web development in Python. So Python can run the web server that returns some sort of a response following the hypertext transfer protocol. So Flask is basically a micro web framework, and it has just got a Python module that assists you in building your web application. And this is what I can simply put in some very simple words. So Flask takes advantage of the simplicity of the Python as an approach for beginners, which makes it easy to build a simple and a very basic application to something quite complex with a lot of backend APIs and microservices that can exactly serve to millions of users. So other than Flask, we have got Django that is again making use of Python for developing applications for web, and it is quite popular. But compared to Django, Flask is in fact very Pythonic. So it's easy to get started with Flask because you don't have to learn a lot of things. And it's a micro web framework. So that doesn't mean your whole application should be inside one single Python file. So you can and you should use like a lot of files for larger programs to handle the complexity. Micro simply means that the Flask framework is simple but extensible. So basically, you are responsible for whatever you're trying to do in your Flask application. You can decide what database you want to use or what object relation mapping you want to use. Basically, you have the freedom to do all that. So Flask also helps to enforce the modern standards of development. So unless your web application is 100% client side, it consists of only HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files. You should be splitting your application into two parts. The first is a front-end client that is implemented using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And the second is a backend API that is running on some remote server. So Flask allows you to do that in a very easy manner. So basically, what you can do is that with Flask, you can divide your entire application into three parts. The first one will be the application logic that will simply act as a server layer. So your application logic can be reused by any number of applications. So this means you can make a mobile application that utilizes your API, or you can consume an API in a completely separate application, or you can even allow others to access your API for free or for a price. Next, you can have a separate client layer for your Flask application. So it is a completely separate entity, and you can take care of advanced front-end needs in your user interface, which can be rendered either on the server side or on the client side. And then there is a separate database layer, which you can do for all sorts of database that you're trying to implement. It can be a SQL database or it can be a NoSQL database, your choice. So Flask basically allows you to divide your application into these three components so that you can work on them individually and you can get something fruitful at the end of the whole development process. So there are various advantages of Flask. So basically Flask stands out from the other frameworks because it lets developers take the driver's seat and have full control over the applications that they're trying to create. So if you like relational database, that is simply great. Flask supports all of them. Maybe you prefer a NoSQL database, no problem at all. Flask even works with that. So basically, you can also make use of some of the other modules that you're trying to develop. Or let's say if you have developed your own database engine, Flask will allow you to work on that as well. So basically, with Flask, you can choose the components of the application that you are creating, or you can write the whole application right from the scratch. And the key to this freedom was the Flask was designed from the start to be extended with a very simple code. So basically, you can have all the basic functionality that the web application should have, and you can also extend the functionality by using some sort of third-party libraries or modules, or even by you. And this is why working with Flask is so much advantageous, and it has such a great developer experience as well. And yes, Flask is being used by multiple companies right now. Like at Netflix, the demand engineering team is responsible for regional followers, traffic distribution, capacity operations, and fleet efficiency over the Netflix cloud. And all of this is being handled over Amazon Web Services, basically the AWS cloud, through the Flask APIs. Similarly, Red Hat is using Flask with Fedora on Pagure infrastructure, OpenStack, Beaker, OpenShift, Ansible, and more. Mozilla is making use of Flask at Balrog, release engineering services, and other tools and APIs. So right now, there are more than 1,500 companies that are using Flask actively for product development and services. So you can just go to the official website of Flask and you can check out all the websites and all the products that have been developed using the same. So with this, we come to the end of the first agenda. If anyone has got any doubts, they can put it up in the chat section, and I will be going through all of them now. If no one has got no doubts, they can just put a yes on the chat section. So this is a signal that everything is going fine, and you all are able to understand whatever I'm saying. Okay, awesome. I guess there are no doubts. If you have doubts, just put it on the chat section and I will come over them at the end of the second agenda. So let's start with the second agenda on what is an API. And we will do some hands-on. So it is preferred for you to be on a laptop or on a tablet. But if you're not, just follow what I am trying to do and it will be simply fruitful. So let us start with the second most important agenda of the session, and that is what is an API. APIs or application programming interfaces are just defined as a set of functions or protocols through which two softwares can talk to each other without any sort of a human interference. So basically, from a technical definition, API is just an abstracted point of entry to a piece of software that is available by open interface, and you can access its behavior as well. So let me break down that technical definition for you. So by application, we mean a service with which a developer wants to interact. And this service can be either a stream of meteorological data, or it can be just an image sharing application like Instagram, or it can be an open data portal. So the interface is the entry door to the service. You have to go through that door to interact with the service capabilities. And lastly, we have a program, which is a set of coded procedures written by a developer. And this program is designed to interact with the application so that we don't have to. So if I just take an example, the program can submit a postal address to get certain set of coordinates like Google Maps or Airbnb. So an API allows you to access all that information and also to manipulate that information through some sort of an interface. And this is the reason why APIs are so popular right now. Like if you just go to any job profiles or if you just go to any job description, most of them will talk about having an experience developing and working with APIs, because almost all of the softwares that are being implemented today, they are either making use of API or they are just an API in itself. So this makes it very easy to work with, and it is also quite extensible that we will be seeing later. So to understand API in more depth, we need to understand how the web works. So when I think about web, I just imagine a very large network of connected servers. So every page on the internet is stored somewhere on a remote server. A remote server is not so mystical after all. It is just a part of a remotely located computer that is optimized to process some sort of a request. So to put the things into perspective, you can spin up a server on your laptop capable of serving an entire website to the web, and you can just like have a server up and ready which can be accessed by someone else. So let's say if you just go on your browser and you type www.instagram.com into your browser, a request will straight away go to your Instagram's remote server. Let me just do that right for you here. So if I just go here and I type instagram.com, so automatically I'm sending a response to the official application of Instagram that is again stored on some remote server. Once your browser receives the response, it interprets the code and displays on the page. So to the browser, this is known as a client, and the Instagram server is an API. So let me just go to my own profile, which is basically Harsh Casper. So basically what I'm trying to do here is that I'm trying to access my own profile through an API. So this is what we call an API, and this API has got an endpoint that is my username. So I can just go to anyone's username and I can start accessing the whole page that has been rendered by the remote server. So this means that every time, let's say I'm going to Hrithik Roshan, I suppose. I guess that should be his Instagram ID. Okay, yes, it is his Instagram ID. So basically, this means that every time you visit a page on the web, you are interacting with some sort of a server API. And API is not the same as a remote server. An API is just a part of that particular server that receives requests and sends the responses. So basically, here you can see that I have sent a request for accessing the Instagram page of Hrithik Roshan, and I got a response from the Instagram's API showing me the whole profile of Hrithik Roshan. So this is a very easy way of understanding the APIs in a bit more depth. So basically, all of the software that you are seeing today, it can be Facebook, it can be Instagram, it can be WhatsApp. All of them are using some sort of an API to basically work underneath the whole application. And this is just because we don't write the code all at once. What we instead try to do is that we basically break down the code into multiple components, and all these components can be a separate API. So let's say if I'm on Instagram, I am accessing Hrithik Roshan's profile. So basically that is a separate API. If I'm sending a message to someone, that is a separate API. So using APIs, you can break down the entire software and you can then work on them. So I guess that would be enough for the example part. Yes. So basically API is just a programmatical way through which you can interact with an application. So the programming interface part is a lot straightforward. It is a set of hooks that allows users, basically the consumers of the API, to understand the underlying functionality of the application in some way. So if I just showed you the Instagram example, a lot of things are going underneath that. Possibly the API endpoint that we are trying to access, it is sending a request to some other API, and that API is sending a request to some other API. But we don't know about all that. We just care to have our functionality implemented. So in this way, interfaces are a great way to interact with an object or a device, and the programming interfaces are a way for your application to interact with others. So when most developers say about API, they mean services in form of REST or in the recent years GraphQL. And these service APIs, also called as web APIs, they allow applications to interact with the features and the data of some other application as well. So this type of API can be either used internally within a company, or it can be exposed to the outside world, either free or by a paid model. So a great example of this is the Google Maps API that is internally being used by all of the Google products. But just like search, but to the third party companies, it is being offered for a price. Like let's say Zomato is making use of the Google Map API. So Zomato has to basically pay for whatever they are trying to use. So this is a great way of understanding APIs and what it is actually trying to do. So there are a lot of APIs that we are using right now. So even if you are using Google Meet, that is making use of an API. Let's say you go to some sort of an article and it is basically asking you to like that article using the Facebook. That is also implemented using API because you are on some other platform and basically you will be liking that particular post or that particular blog using some other service. So to interconnect both of these services, we make use of an API. Let's say you go to a website and it basically shows you this option that you can continue with Facebook or you can continue with Google. Even these are making use of an API. So basically, they make use of an OAuth login API. So if you are like continuing with Google, the Google will be sharing your information, some particular information, with the particular website that you're trying to access. Let's say you are going to Amazon.com and Amazon has asked you to basically pay for the order that you have implemented. And you have a lot of options here. You can pay by PayPal or let's say by Google Pay or let's say by Phone Pay. So there are a lot of options there. And all of these options are implemented using APIs. So as you can see, these APIs can be used by some other companies for integrating with the services. And this is why APIs are such a great way of extending your application functionality. So let's say I'm developing an e-commerce application and I don't want to have my own method of currency authentication. So I can simply take the API of Google Pay or PayPal. I can integrate that with the website and I can simply start doing my entire payment service. So these are the various examples of APIs. And it not only helps the developers write better programs, but it also helps the community around the program as a whole. Because if we are using API, we can see how the data is moving into the whole API. We can also make sense of how the API is doing the things right and what are the particular bugs are so that we can finally improve on the API development part. So basically using APIs, you can do a lot of things. Like let's say you are using the Twitter API. So using Twitter API, you can send tweets without using any sort of a web browser or any mobile application with just a few lines of code. So this is the power that APIs are providing you for developing your own applications. So APIs are right now becoming a very powerful business tool for companies to accelerate the digital transformation and advance new ideas. And it also enables companies to grow their businesses faster than before and represent an answer for organizations that are currently spending billions of dollars on integrating disparate systems. So it's not uncommon for the development team, just like I mentioned before, to break up their application or software into multiple servers that can talk to each other by making use of an API. And the servers that perform helper function for the main application server are commonly referred to as the microservices. So you can even use third-party APIs like Google Maps or Twitter or Slack so that you can work around with them in your own application. And these are what makes APIs quite significant. So now we are going to do some hands-on. If anyone has got any doubts, they can mention it on the chat section. If there are no doubts, they can just put a yes or no doubts so that I can proceed with the hands-on part. Okay. And how many of you have installed Postman? This is one question that I would like to know. Okay, so for people who have already installed Postman, okay, so Keshav is basically asking that what is the difference between an API and a microservices. So basically, to put it very simply, API is just a discrete service, while microservices commands and whole application infrastructure. So API can be just one part of that particular microservice, while microservice is just the whole of the whole helper function that is monitoring all the other APIs. I guess that would answer the question for a very short definition. Okay, so for people who have already installed Postman, they can open up the Postman, but due to some reasons, my Postman is not working today. I don't know why. Let me just try it back again. So if my Postman is not working, I'm going to show you the hands-on with some other software so that you can just get a gist of how the APIs work. Okay, so my Postman is not working. So I'm going to use a browser extension for my purpose. It is called RESTman. If you want to work with it, you can just search on Google RESTman Chrome extension, and you can just download this. And for today's hands-on, I'm going to show you this particular application, which is again an API, and it is a very popular API. Okay, that's strange. Yes. So basically, this API that we will be making use today is the random user generator. So using this random user generator, we can generate fake data of people. So whatever data you are trying to generate, they don't exist in real life. It is as simple as that. And it is free and open source. So you can just go and check out your source code on GitHub, and you can see how it has been implemented. But we don't want to get into the source code today. So what we are going to do today is to basically access this API. So let's check out the doc. Okay, let's first go to the home, and let us just copy this and go to our RESTman or Postman and try to access it. So once we click on this, we can see that the status is 200, and that basically signifies that this web application has been processed successfully. So 200 just means that this particular request has been processed, and this is what we have got in the particular response. So you can access for anything, and you will be basically getting a response right here. So let us start by generating some of the fake data of users. Omkar, can you see my screen back again? Because I guess this should be visible. Can anyone just confirm that they can see my Chrome tab?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so let us start by generating some of the random data. So first, let's generate a fake data of a male person. So what I will be doing is that I will be passing an endpoint that basically signifies that the gender is male. And once I pass a GET request, okay, this is strange. Okay, I forgot something here. And it's the API endpoint. Okay, so now if I just pass the gender, male, so yes, so this is how we have got the fake data of a particular male person. And this particular person doesn't exist, but according to the API, these are the particular details of that person. So his name is Monsieur Matthias Roy, and he basically lives in Switzerland right now. And these are his details. So this is actually a very interesting way of seeing how the APIs work. So what we are doing right here is that we are basically passing a GET request. So in a GET request, we will be getting a certain response, and this response is in a JSON format, which we can exactly see right here, and we can also make use of that in our application. So let us generate the data of a female in a similar manner. So let's pass it, and yes, we have got a data of a female. Her name is Miss Tamanna, Pure Horst. I guess I didn't spell that right. And these are the particular details of the person. So if you have not installed any sort of Postman or RESTman on your system, you can just go right here. You can do that on the browser itself, and you can see the person, the details. So we have the JSON, we have the raw data, and we can see all the details right here, and we can possibly make use of that in the application. So this is how you can basically work with some of the pre-built APIs for your purpose. In the next half of the session, we will see how we can develop our own APIs. So let us remove this and let us try to generate the data of a large number of users. Let's say we want 50 users. We want the data of 50 people that doesn't exist in real life. And yes, we have the data of 50 people that doesn't exist in real life. So you can access all the data here and you can possibly make use of this data for your own application. So let's say you're trying to build a social media application and you don't have a lot of users, but let's say you want to test your application against a number of users. So what you can do is that you can basically generate a lot of fake users. You can input them into the database and you can start checking the scalability of your application on the basis of that. So you can play around with this API for as long as you want. But we will moving forward with some other things. Like let's say if I want this data to be in the XML format. So this is the XML data that we have got. Just keep in mind that XML is a lot different data passage format compared to JSON. So don't try to compare both of them. And you can also have some other data like plain text. Yes, this is a plain text. It looks like JSON, but it is plain text. We can also do this in CSV. So we can see the data that has been generated using CSV. So you can play around with the whole application. I will just advise you to go to this documentation and you can particularly check how to work with this API for your purpose. So if you're practicing how to access REST APIs, this is the perfect place for you to practice on that. And as a pro tip, many of the job interviews that actually work around REST APIs, they will basically ask you to work with this API itself. So if you already have an experience with this, you will not face any problems during interviews. So with this, we have come to this end of this particular agenda. So if anyone has got any doubts up till now, they can mention that on the chat section. If no one has no doubts, they can just put yes or no doubts so that we can move forward with some hands-on on Flask and what REST APIs particularly are. Okay, I guess majority of you have no doubts. Come on guys, if you're not able to understand something, just mention that on the chat section because that will make it very easy for me to understand all your doubts and also to clarify about them. So for now, we are going to proceed with developing an API with Flask. Okay, my slides are not visible. Yes. So basically, now we will get started with building an API using Flask. And Flask is so simple that you can create an API using a single file. And yes, I will show you how to build simple API endpoints using Flask. But before that, we are going to see what the REST protocol is after all. So REST basically stands for Representational State Transfer. And to be simply put, it is a software architecture style that defines a set of constraints to be used for creating any sort of a web service. So in very, very simple words, REST is just an architectural style. You might be wondering why are we discussing about architecture? Because most of us are students from CSE or IT or from some other department. But architecture is just a way of organizing things. And REST is an architecture way through which we are going to organize our APIs. So basically, REST APIs rely on a stateless client server cacheable communication protocol, and it is basically called as the hypertext transfer protocol that we have discussed so much about in the first half of the session. So, to be simply put, the whole World Wide Web, basically WWW, it is based on the hypertext transfer protocol, and it can be viewed as a REST-based architecture if you want to go that far. So when a REST API is called, this server will send some sort of data, basically the representation of the state of the requested resource to the client. So let me get this very straight. The random user API that we were using previously, it is also an example of the REST API. Majority of the APIs that you're trying to use, they are an example of the REST API. So a web application that fulfills the constraints of the REST is called as a RESTful application. To be simply put, it just exposes the information about the requested resources, and it also allows you to take some of the actions on that particular resource. So RESTful applications use HTTP requests to create data, update the data, read the data, and also to delete the data. And this is why the REST makes use of the hypertext transfer protocol for all sort of the CRUD operation. CRUD basically stands for create, read, update, and delete. So if you're following the REST constraints, it will make your API development part easier to use and easier to understand for new project members, or it will even help you in the future as well. So REST is very lightweight. It is platform independent. So it doesn't matter if you're working on Linux or Windows or Mac OS, and it is also independent of the server or the language that you're using. So if you're creating a REST API in C Sharp, you can make use of that in your Python application as well. So to understand REST, you basically need to understand some of the basics of hypertext transfer protocol. But since we have a time constraint for that, we are not going to dive deep into it. But I will just give a very basic primer on what it is. So the hypertext transfer protocol methods are also referred to as the HTTP verbs. And the most commonly used are get, post, patch, delete, and put. So whatever API responses that we were doing earlier in the RESTman, let me just show that again. So in the RESTman, we can just go and check this out here. So whatever we were doing here, they were a part of the get request. So basically a get method requests a representation of the specified resource. So if you're requesting for any sort of a resource using get, you can only retrieve some sort of a data. You cannot pass some sort of data to the application. Another HTTP verb is the post method, which basically allows you to submit an entity to the specified resource. And this often causes a change in the state or the side effects on the server. So let's say you have submitted some sort of Google form. And once you click on submit, all your information is going back to the Google server and it is being automatically submitted. So this is a good example of how the post method actually works. So basically, requests using post should be used to send some sort of data, or basically to create some sort of resource. Now we have got the put method that basically replaces all current representations of the target resource with the request payload. And the requests using put are just used to update a particular resource that is already existing. And lastly, we have got the delete method that just specifies to delete the specific resource that we are trying to point at. So in today's session, we will be basically going through how to work with get and post requests using Flask and also get a hands-on on this specific thing. So let's start writing with an application. So you just require to have Python installed on your system, and you should have a modern code editor like VS Code or Atom. So I'm going to use VS Code for my purpose. So let's get started up. So for people who are on their laptop, I want them to code alongside me. And if they're facing any sort of doubts, they can just put that on the chat section. So let's get started up. So how many of you can see my command line? Just put a yes or a no. Okay, yes. Okay, awesome. So the first thing that we are going to do is to basically create a folder. and this folder will contain all the files and all the code that we are going to write. So let's get started up with creating a particular folder. Let's get it as Flask demo. So once we have done that, we will just go into this particular folder using the cd command. So you can create the folder using your own graphical user interface, but I am preferring to use the command line interface. That makes it very easy to work with. So just make use of the make directory command to create a folder and the cd command to basically go inside that particular folder. Once we have done that, let me just clear the whole screen. And now let us first initialize a virtual environment. Now you might ask what a virtual environment is. So basically on Python, we are making use of a lot of libraries and modules. And sometimes it is possible that these libraries and modules are exactly clashing with each other. If I just give a very good example, let's say I'm trying to use NumPy with TensorFlow. And let's say the TensorFlow 2.2 version is supporting only NumPy 1.3 version. But on my system, I have a slightly upgraded version. I'm just taking that as an example. I do not remember the exact versions. So in that case, there will be a conflicting versioning of the modules and the libraries. So how can I exactly cover that? So for this purpose, we are going to make use of this particular virtual environment where we can install the packages right from the scratch so that they don't interfere with some other package that I have installed somewhere else. So sounds easy. Let's implement it. So we are going to pass the command pip install virtual env for this purpose. It will basically install the virtual env on your system, and you will be get set ready for setting up your virtual environment on your particular folder. So it is going to take some time, I guess. Till then, if anyone has got any doubts, they can just put on the chat section. Okay, so I guess I have already installed virtual env. So I don't need to install it back again. Let me just skip this part. So let me just get started with installing virtual env. So you can just make use of the virtual env command, and you can give the name for your virtual environment. So I'm giving the name as env, and let us just press the click on it. So what it will do is that it will create a new Python executable in my system, like basically in my folder, that allows me to install any sort of libraries or modules for this particular environment. So if I'm installing any sort of libraries or modules, it will not be installed on my main Python environment. It will be just for this particular environment that I have installed that particular module. So it will take some time, and yes, we are done. So let us kickstart this virtual environment. So we are going to use the command env slash scripts slash activate. So you can make use of the backward slash for this entire purpose. So let's click on the same. And now we can see that there is an env mentioned right here. So that basically means that our virtual environment has been installed and it is up and ready, which we can make use of for installing any sort of packages for our purpose. So let me clear that up and let me install the first package, that is pip install Flask. So it has invoked my antivirus. Okay, let's just wait for a few seconds and it will basically install the Flask for my purpose. I'm literally using one of the worst antivirus for now. And yes, Flask allows you to install a number of packages along with the base implementation. Like I have got the Jinja 2 templating that allows me to create dynamic pages. I have got the markup safe, I have got Click, I have got It's Dangerous, and a lot other modules that I can make use of in my application. So once we have done that, let us clear all this and let us create a base file that we will call as app.py. And let us start our VS Code. So for people who are following up with me, if you have got any doubts, they can put up in the chat section. Okay, my VS Code will take some time to open up. I guess it should be visible now. Okay, so we are going to start up with our base coding. So the first thing that we will be doing is that we will be basically importing Flask. So let us write the first line of the Flask code. So we will mention from Flask import Flask, and that is all. So basically we will be importing the Flask class, and it will be just the instance of the class that we will be making use of in our Flask application. So once we have done that, let us now go next and let us create an entity, basically an instance of this class that we can make use of in the entire application. So I'm going to use app Flask, and I'm going to mention the name of my particular application. So basically, you can use underscore underscore name underscore underscore, because depending on if it is started as an application or basically just imported as a module, this name will be quite different. So you can customize on that term. But for majority of the Flask application, this is what we are going to follow. So once we have done that, let us now move next and let us have the first route of our application. So what I will be doing is that I will be creating a decorator function app.route, and I will mention the forward slash, and I will mention the first command, and that will basically hello world. So once I do that, I will basically return the hello world message. So once we do that, let us just save this and let us create our main function. So our main function will look something like this. And we will just mention that this application will run through this run command, and we will set this debug as true. So basically, Flask applications provide you a debugger that will be easy for you to debug your application while you're still on the development stage. If you are deploying your application to some sort of server, you can just keep that as a false. But in the default way, we just keep that as a true. So let us save this and let us run our Flask application, and that can be done by Python app.py. Okay, there is okay, I got it. So once we run this application, it will kickstart the local development server on port 5000. And this is where we can start building up our Flask application. So let's allow it to run. It's taking a lot of time. So till then, if anyone has got any doubts. Okay, sure. So Venkatakai, after creating app.py, you have to just go and import the Flask class here. So you can just mention from Flask, import Flask. And this will basically allow you to use all sort of functions or all sort of modules that are available in the Flask web framework. Next, you are going to create an instance of this class. And this is just done by simply mentioning the app and mentioning the Flask with an underscore underscore name underscore underscore. That can be basically customized if you're like importing your application from a module, or if you're creating an application right from the base, because this will allow your Flask application to basically identify your Python code and your HTML and the CSS code. So in every Flask application, our HTML code is stored in a separate folder called templates, and your CSS code is stored in a separate folder that is basically called as static. Even your JavaScript or jQuery code will be stored in static. So this allows Flask application to identify where your particular files and the folders are situated. And this is what we are going to use in this particular decorator function. So let me just put the code for comments right here for this purpose. Okay, once we do that, let me mention this here. And this will set up our Flask application. And this route is a decorator. I'm just mentioning this right here, decorator. And this basically which tells Flask. So I guess our Flask application should be up and
सर
running. Yeah.
सर सर ये जो आप CMD पर इसे इंस्टॉल कर रहे हैं फ्लास्क को
Mm-hmm.
और सर VS कोड पे रन कर रहे हैं तो ये रन हो जाएगा
नहीं लगेगा.
तो सर इसको तो VS कोड के पावर शेल में इंस्टॉल करते हैं
Basically, both of them are working in the same manner. You can open up the terminal right here, but I'm not very friendly with the VS Code terminal because of some reasons. This is the reason why I'm using the command line right here and the VS Code for basically coding it up. Even I can use the whole PowerShell right here for this exact purpose. That will not make any sort of difference. Okay, so do you guys have any other doubts? Okay, so Venkatesh, basically the underscore represents the module that we have at place for here. So that will basically allow the Flask application to identify where the app.py is located and where the static folders and its template folder is located. So this is just a very easy way of going forward with the things. And now our development server is up and ready. So it shows that this web application is running on the 5000 server. So let us just copy this and let us go to our browser and paste this up. Okay. And once we pass this, so it will show us the first thing, that is the hello world message. So this is our application that is up and ready right here. And if you can just go back to the application, we can see that there is this particular root. So this is what we call as the root URL. So every time some user will be coming onto your application and they will be going to the root URL, they will be seeing this hello world message right on your application. So this route function basically is a decorator that will tell the Flask application what URL they should be triggering. This is just a very basic high-level definition that I would like to give right now. So basically, if you can just go back to the Instagram, you can see that there are a lot of usernames, and you can access someone's profile by just mentioning their username. Because modern web applications, they use the meaningful URLs to help the users remember the particular website URLs and also to come back on them. So let's say I want to create a URL, and that will basically show me a hello Harsh message. So for that purpose, again, we will be implementing a route, and we will implement a route that is called as Harsh. And we will mention here like hello, and I will return hello Harsh. So basically, again, what we have done here is that we have implemented a route, a decorator, which basically tells the Flask application. This is what we are trying to do right here. So if we just go back to the command line, we can see that every time we make some sort of a change to our application, the whole application reloads back again. So we can just go back to the browser again. We can refresh it. It will again show the hello world message because we have not touched this particular endpoint. But if we just go and pass this particular endpoint, that is Harsh, I can see that this message has particularly changed. It is now hello Harsh. So I can like change any message right here. Like I can just give this, this is a Flask workshop. We can save this. I can go back. I can refresh this and I can see the updated message. So this is how Flask basically implements the routing concept. So routing basically means that we will be forwarding some sort of a URL endpoint, and using this endpoint, we will be sending back some information to the web client that the user is making use of. So I guess majority of you might have understand what we are trying to do. Okay, so Badal has a question like, yes, Badal, the Flask application will run anywhere you're installing. So let's say you have installed this application on some particular folder. Let's say you have installed it on Cypher folder, and that has a virtual environment installed. So once you install it, you either run it on VS Code or Sublime Text or Atom or Notepad++ or command line. It will run anywhere. There will be no changes in that. So that is something that is going to be constant. So now let us start writing some other routes. So can anyone just mention me your GitHub username? I will create a route for that. Okay, so Kamal BGRT. Okay, let us create a route for that. So we will create a route and we will say hello Kamal, and we will say that and once we save this, we can again go back to our server and we can pass this particular URL endpoint, and we can see that this message has updated back again. So this is how we work with particularly URL endpoints in our Flask application. So you can experiment this with a lot. You can like start creating multiple endpoints, and you can see like how the endpoints particularly manifest themselves if they are invoked in our application. And the best part about working with API endpoints is that we can also pass some sort of a variable to it. So let's say I want to dynamically pass a username. I don't want /Harsh or /KamalDGRT. What we can have is that we can have basically a user endpoint where we can pass any sort of a username and we can show that particular information. So let us create another endpoint, app.route. We will mention the user and then we can mention the username. So for mentioning the username, we can keep this in this format, username. So just keep this in greater than and the lesser than symbol. And now you can make use of the username as a variable in your Python function. So if you can see that almost all of the Flask routes that we're implementing, it is making use of a Python function at the core. So we can make use of this particular variable, which we can pass to the function, and this function can just render this information on the particular web page. So let me do this, show user profile. And let me show the post ID. Sorry, it should be username. And I can just return that hi user as the standard way of mentioning anything in the return or the print statements. And we can just mention username right here. But before that, we are going to make use of something that is called as escape. So basically, escape allows us to render any information that we are passing through the URL itself. You can just mention right here that from markup safe import escape. And once you do that, you can just go right here and you can mention that this is a part of escape. Let's save this. Let us go back to our application.
सर ये escape module को import नहीं किया?
Can you please repeat that question?
सर ये import जो किए escape module को, तो सर इसको pip install के through import नहीं करेंगे?
So basically, we have installed it with the pip install itself. Like if you just go back a few minutes, like we will have a recording of this session. So we have installed all the modules using pip install itself.
अच्छा ओके सर।
Yeah.
तो सर बस सर एक यही डाउट है कि सर जैसे सीएमडी पर जो भी हम इंपोर्ट कर रहे हैं मॉड्यूल को, तो वो वीएस कोड में रन करे। अगर वीएस कोड में हम इसको इंपोर्ट फ्लास्क लिखे और सीएमडी में आप रन किए, तो ये रन कर जाएगा यहाँ पर वीएस कोड में? क्योंकि सर एक तो सर वीएस कोड का भी तो पावर, एक तो वीएस कोड का भी पावर सेल में भी तो
Okay, let's try to do it. Let us try to do it. Okay.
यस सर, यहाँ pip इंस्टॉल।
Yes, it is running right here.
यस सर, ये फ्लास्क का डेमो का इसको डाउनलोड किए हैं, फिर इसका फाइल कहाँ से लाए हैं?
You have to just pass this command.
सर ये नहीं, ये जो आप फ्लास्क का डेमो जो फर्स्ट लाइन में लिखे थे ना, फ्लास्क का डेमो जो कहाँ से आप लोकेशन देखे तो वो डाउनलोड किए थे?
You have to create a folder, you have to cd inside it, and you have to create a virtual environment. That isn't quite hard.
बस एक ये वाला सर, एक ये वाला समझा दीजिए। ये जो फ्लास्क का डेमो जो अभी आप लोकेशन से देखे थे, वो एक लाइन समझा दीजिए, वो दिखा दीजिए कि सर वो मतलब डाउनलोड किए थे या फिर कैसे वो वहाँ पर।
You have to create a folder. Let's say
यहाँ पर
Flask app, make a directory. Basically, this is the Linux command for it, right? And we can use that in Windows as well. Yes, and then go into the Flask app. That's how easy it is.
अच्छा, तो मतलब एक फोल्डर बनाए हैं फ्लास्क नाम से। अच्छा ओके सर, मैं अगर सर ये रिकॉर्डिंग सेशन आप दे देंगे तो सर मैं प्रैक्टिकल कर लूंगा।
Okay. So basically, you can take the recording from the people who are actually organizing this event. Okay. So as you can see that we have already implemented an endpoint. Let me restart the whole application. Yes. So we have particularly added an endpoint that is /user / the username. So if we just go back to our application, let us write this endpoint and let us mention this as Harsh Casper. So I can see that this particular user endpoint has been accessed by the Flask application right here. It is passed to my Python function, and this is what is being rendered by returning this particular statement in form of an HTML file. So you can basically experiment with this. You can like have a lot of endpoints that can have username, basically post IDs or something like that, and you can basically start working with this. So for the purpose of this session, we just need to have the working knowledge of how the basic get and the post request works. So whatever we are trying to implement here, they are a part of the get request. We will be implementing post request after some time. So this is what you exactly need to know right now. So up till now, if anyone has got any doubts. And for people who are requesting for the recording, so that will be accessed by the people who are organizing the meetup. So they will be providing you that either through a YouTube link or on Google Drive.
कैसे? Repeat.
Like I just mentioned that if you want to have a recording, you can contact the people who are organizing the meetup. They will provide you a YouTube URL or a Google Drive link.
Sir, can I ask it out?
Yeah, sure.
Sir, the word escape, it is saying it's not found.
Okay, so if the word escape is saying not found, just go to from markup import escape.
Okay.
So basically, it is a technique that allows you to format your return statements quite easily in Flask because think from it from a programmatic way. we are trying to return some information, and this is not a regular HTML information. So how is this information being rendered on the web browser? So this is the reason why we are implementing this markup state for our purpose.
सर जैसे कि बाय द वे जैसे मैं CMD पर इसे इंस्टॉल करना है तो क्या लिखेंगे pip install markup shape escape.
I guess you should like it has been already mentioned that Python was a prerequisite of this thing, particular session. So I will just advise you to go over and take a look at how you can install packages, how you can create folders using Python, because without that, it will be exactly difficult for me to proceed further.
सर बस एक बार वो escape वाला को बता दीजिए इंस्टॉल करके.
That part is already installed with Flask. You don't have to install it back again.
अच्छा तो सर CMD पर लिखेंगे क्या एक बार वो बता देंगे pip install के बाद.
You have to just get install Flask. I have not installed anything other than Flask right now. Okay, I guess I will move forward. So now, basically, whatever information that we have seen, they are being rendered as a markup on the web browser. But now we want to render some sort of information in form of a JSON message. So let us have a route that basically returns us a timestamp of a particular date and time. So let's implement another route for our purpose. We can keep this route as date, which will return as a timestamp in form of a JSON message. For people who don't know what JSON is, it is basically JavaScript object notation, and it basically returns some sort of information in a formatted way so that you can use that in your application. So let us mention this get date. For this purpose, we are going to import the date time. So import date time. It is pre-built with Python, so you don't have to install it back again, as far as I expect. And let us JSONify. And for this JSONify, you have to import another thing from the Flask itself, and that is called JSONify. So yes, you return the JSONify. And what it will basically do is that it will basically convert your entire timestamp as a JSON, and it will basically return back to you. So let us keep this message, and let us just mention date time dot date time dot UTC now, which will basically take the current date time, and it will convert that to the ISO format. Let us press enter. So as you can just go back to the command line, it should launch back again without any sort of a problem. And now if we just go back to our browser, we can mention the date. If there is some problem, the message is not defined. Okay, it is because we have not enclosed this in single quotes. So this is what we got as a JSON message. And in the JSON message, we basically have a whole timestamp of the particular date and time that we are currently at. So this is how you can import and export the JSON messages using the JSONify module in your Flask application. So this is the basic primer about Flask up till now. And now we are going to basically jump into creating a full-fledged application by making use of the Flask API. Okay, so up till now, if anyone has got any doubts, they can mention that on the chat section, or else we can just proceed. Okay, yeah, Kamal, here is the code. Rohit, is it possible for you to unmute yourself? Yeah, thank you.
Sir, should we import date time module?
You don't need to import data. Okay, yeah, we need to import data, but you don't have to flip install it back again because it is already a part of the Python 3.x code.
Okay. Okay, sir.
Yeah. So now that we have done all this, let us get started by implementing a post route that allows us to basically access the weather of any particular location. So you can just go to this particular website. Okay, and basically get your latitude or longitude of any specified location. So let's say if you are studying in Uttar Pradesh like Lucknow or Chennai or Kolkata, so you can just find your latitude and the longitude and you can just store it for your purpose. So for this part, we will be making use of something that we call as the Open Weather Map API. So Open Weather Map is a highly extensible API that gives you free access to weather data. Basically, so I have a sample API endpoint right here, which I've stored for the future. So if I just go over here and I can just pass this to my web browser, it will return me a JSON message that comprises of my longitude and the latitude. It is for Chennai, I suppose. And it will show me the weather, the minimum temperature, the normal temperature, pressure, humidity, sunrise, sunset, time zone. Okay, so it is for Jalpaiguri. This is what I'm living right now. So it consists of all the data that we want to have from the Open Weather Map API. If I just beautify it a bit, if I just open my wristband, so if I see this on the Mozilla Firefox, I can see that this entire JSON consists of my latitude, the longitude, the ID, main, description, icon, the temperature, the speed, and all that. So what I'm going to do now is that I will develop an application that allows me to see all these data basically through a Flask application so that I don't have to input this ugly URL every time back again. So let us start creating it right now. So for this purpose, what we are going to do now is that we will basically delete all this right here because we simply don't need them. And we are going to import some other modules and they will basically import request as a request, and we will import the JSON as well. So if you have not, you might need to particularly install the request. Let me just install it back again. And the JSON as well. So that it doesn't cause any sort of a problem in my main application. So what I'm going to do right here is that I will just pass my latitude and the longitude, and I will just have a simple Flask application that returns to me the information like what is the current weather of my city and what are the weather conditions in a slightly more described manner. So till the time it gets installed, let us get started with writing our code. So for this purpose, what we are going to do now is that we will basically create another folder right here. And this folder will serve to store our HTML files. So basically, let us create another folder that is templates. So for this, we will make use of the make directory command. And once we do that, let us go into the templates folder. And let us create a simple file that will be, hello, am I audible? Can anyone just confirm?
Yes.
Okay. I was disconnected for a bit due to my net issues. So let me share my screen back again. Is my screen visible?
Yes, it is visible.
Okay. So
Maybe you can increase the font size in VS Code, just like 2 points more, I guess.
okay.
Control is the shortcut, right?
Can you please tell me that?
Control plus is the shortcut, I think so.
It is not.
Like in mine, it works.
I guess my applications are crashing today. This is the reason why I dislike VS Code. It is simply too buggy. Okay, let's not worry. Let me continue this in my Sublime text. Okay. Yes. Okay, so since VS Code is not working, I will just continue my Sublime text. So what we are going to do now is that we will simply build an application that allows us to access the weather of a particular location by simply passing the latitude and the longitude. So we don't have to update that ugly URL over and over again. And we can just work on this simple extensible thing so that we can just pass a particular URL endpoint and it basically tells us what sort of weather is going to happen in our city today. So before that, we have to actually code some HTML code. So if you don't know HTML, you don't have to worry. There are very few things that they are going to do right here. So let us just create an index.html primarily. And let us start working on the same. Okay. So basically, let us first do the obligations. Mention the doc.html. Okay. Let us mention the title. That is a basic weather app. And let us link a style sheet. And that will be a very basic bootstrap. So we are going to use a Syrian bootstrap for our purpose. I guess it should be correct for my memory. Okay, and we will just end the head tag and we will have the body tag. And in this, we are going to make use of something that we call as the Jinja templating. So basically, Jinja templating allows us to basically allow the passing of the data that has been generated by the Flask application to our HTML web page. So our HTML web page will be basically returning the weather data. So we will just use the Jinja templating of mentioning that. You don't have to actually hardcode thing on the HTML file, but you just have to mention the particular variable in the curly braces. And we can also have the description, something like that. And this can be in the description curly braces. Yes. And finally, we can end the body tag because this is what we need to have in the HTML file. And let's end the HTML tag as well. So this is a very basic index.html that we have developed. It is exactly going to show only two information. One is the weather of that particular place, and one is a slightly more descriptive weather of that particular place. So once we are done with index.html, let's move ahead with creating the Flask code. So since we already have an endpoint for hello world, let us start writing by another endpoint. and that will basically be better. Let us define the get index, and let us first define the path index where our index.html is stored. We will define the path index as index.html, and Flask automatically identifies where all the HTML files are stored. So in our case, we have stored all the HTML files in our templates folder. So this is where the Flask is going to access all the HTML files from. So we are just defining the index.html so that we can instantiate the weather app template that we had developed earlier. Yes. And now we are going to basically initialize the Open Weather Map API. So I'm going to use my own API for this purpose, which should be exactly stored. Okay, it is not stored. It should be. Okay, let me try accessing my Mozilla. Yes. So even you can try this on your browser. Like you can just hit up this particular URL and you can get all the data associated with the weather of my place. But what is particularly interesting is this particular app ID. Now you might be wondering, why are we exactly using this app ID? So basically, most of the APIs are either given on a free basis or on a paid basis. But let's say if that API is paid, so you need some way to authenticate if the particular API is being used by the correct person or not. So let's say I have an API and that allows you to generate some news for social media. So I want to see like who is using my API the most. So what I did was that I basically offered my API on a paid basis. So every user has to pay me 10 rupees per month to access my API. And I have given them these API keys. And these API keys are distinct for almost everyone. So whoever is using my API, I can basically monitor by how much they are using my particular ID. So in that way, I can monitor and I can track who is using my API the most and in what way they are making use of this API. And even if I'm offering this API for free, it is highly, like there are high chances that people might make malicious use of the same. Like one single person might have hundreds of app IDs for hundreds of applications. And I don't obviously want that. So this is the reason why I will create some sort of an app ID so that I can give one app ID to only one person who has registered for it, and they can possibly make use of the same. So for this tutorial, you can even make use of my app ID. I don't have any problems with that because it can accept almost 6 lakh requests per month. That is what I remember. So let us first initialize the app ID, and we will just store that in a string right here. And then our latitude and the longitude. And since I don't remember them, let me just go over to this particular website so that I can check where I'm particularly located. So right now I am in Darjeeling, which is a very cold place. And this is my latitude and my longitude. So I'm just going to enter that. You can enter the latitude and the longitude of your own place so that it becomes very easy for you to see how accurate your application is. So once we have done that, let us start formatting our URL. So we will pass a URL and we will keep this as, basically we will just copy and paste the entire first part. And we will just concatenate this particular latitude that we have defined earlier. And then we will just copy paste again the second part. Yes. And then we are going to define the units. So we need the metric unit so that it becomes easy for us to monitor how the things are going. And then the app ID. And this app ID can be the app ID that we have defined earlier in our application. So we have the app ID, we have the latitude, we have the longitude, and now we have the whole URL itself. So if you want to test this application on your browser, like on your Python shell, I can show that again. Let us open the Python. This is the Python shell. Let us check the app ID. So this is the app ID. This is the latitude. This is the longitude. And this is our whole URL. So once we do that, we can see the URL that we have generated by simply concatenating the latitude and the longitude. And now we are going to make use of basically the request. So basically we can import request as RQ. We will not have any problems in that. And then we are going to create a parsable object where we will basically send a GET request to this particular URL, and we will get all the content that has been generated out of it. So we will pass a GET request on this particular URL, and then we are going to get a content. This should not be a problem. Okay, I got the problem. Yes. And now we are going to just basically get like the data that we have got. It should be in a JSON format. Okay. So yes, this is the JSON data that we have generated, and this is exactly what we are going to pass in our application. So let us implement all these things back again in our Flask application. So let us create a parsable. Let us use a rake object that we have defined for request. For people who don't know what requests are, it is basically an HTTP library that allows you to get and post requests on the hypertext transfer protocol. It is a very easy way for working with the URL and getting information from them. So content, let us get the data. So basically JSON data, JSON is a data structure, but it is not being used by the Python as a major data structure. So what we are going to do here is that we will convert this JSON data structure to the dictionary data structure that can be exactly worked around with Python programming language. So we are going to make use of this function called json.loads for our purpose. And once we have that, let us define the weather all. Let us get the weather of the place, just like we had for standard dictionary parsing. And let us get the main weather as well as the weather description. And we are going to use the weather all that we have defined here. And we are going to parse this. That can be done very easily by passing on the necessary variables. You can take a look at the JSON object to exactly find how to exactly parse this whole dictionary. And then we are just going to weather all 0, and then the description. So once we do that, we can simply do one thing, and that is simply returning all this data to our HTML file. But before doing that, we have to actually define something that is called as render template, so that we can implement the Jinja templating for the purpose and implement the request as well. Okay. So once we do all that, let us finally return all the data that we have. So we will basically render the template, and this will be part of our path index. So the path index has been defined as index.html, and the weather is going to be weather main, and the description is going to be the weather description. Once we save this, we can exactly see that this weather variable corresponds to what we have defined in the curly braces right here. And this description also corresponds to what we have defined in the curly braces right here. So once we save this, let us exit the Python kernel. And let us kickstart the app.py file to see if there are any issues in this code. So yes, the code is up and running. Let us go to the root, that is hello world. Okay, seems working. And now let us go to the weather, and it is showing the correct weather. It is clear, and the description is clear sky. So you can experiment with this code as much as you want. You can possibly implement a post request through which you can manually enter the latitude and the longitude through an HTML form, But since we are at a time constraint, we are not going to do that. We are basically hard coded the latitude and the longitude, and you can customize it according to what you want, and you can start experimenting with the whole application. So with this, we come to an end of this whole session. So if you have any questions or queries or doubts, you can just let me know right now, and we will be going through all of them. So thank you for your patience and thank you for listening up to this point.
Hello everyone, I am Akshay Srivastava, and on the behalf of Cypher Build team, I want to thank Harshvardhan sir for the very informative session. And this was indeed a very informative session for me also. I got to learn like lot of things, and Arpit will be posting a Google form, like feedback form. So you have to, everyone has to fill that form, and then we will distribute the certificate within 2-3 working days. Thank you. Also, we'll be posting the recording of this session. Like we'll make a video of the summary of this session and we'll post on our YouTube channel. Thank you, Harshvardhan sir, once again.
Yeah, sure. I will just post the code for this purpose. So if you have not exactly followed up with the entire session, you can just take a look at the code and you can start experimenting with the same. And if you want to learn Flask, there are a lot of resources for that. So make sure to hit one of them up. And even the documentation is also great. So you can just take a look at how the documentation has laid out and how exactly you can work around with it. And if you want to connect with me, I'm just forwarding my social profiles. So you can connect with me on these specific profiles. And if you have any questions regarding anything around web development or Python or JavaScript or even cloud, you can just hit me up and I will be more than happy to resolve all your doubts.